noisy with this air conditioner. Let's put a little bit of the noise outside. Let's close the window here. Got my skull there. Oh my god, this car is fucked up. We had a few incidents in Asturias. Maybe going to this trailer park? I don't know what the hell this was. Like this, you know, oh yeah, also the brake light is broken. Anyway, here we are in a new place. I was supposed to be in Portugal. I was in Portugal for a few days because I wanted to find a new place in the next stop, which is where we are now, in the desert. Gotta pay attention here because oh my god, gotta be careful here. I hope. Yeah, okay, can go. So we were in Portugal. Oh, again the beeping. Kaimak, don't eat my skull there. We got it, by the way, in the cave, but we lost signal when doing the show. Yeah, so we left Asturias. I did not get to climb the mountain because it was bad weather, thunderstorm, and so basically they told us we're not allowed to go. They also closed the access, so I just went back to Portugal and then was looking for the place to stay. I wanted to take a little bit longer, but unfortunately things happen. Usually it's family drama yet again, and so I gotta go back to a place that is not my home either. So anyway, we were in this, what I was saying, it's also making noise. Oh my god, I gotta pay attention here. This is called, what do you call this? Like a place, you know, for kids or even grown-ups to go and to learn. So it was about the wild, like a Disneyland, yeah, but a smaller scale. Was about the Wild West. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be the one which was the actual, you know, studio or where they filmed the part of the movies, but I confused it with another one, so I haven't gone to that one yet. I'm wishing to go, but we were there. I didn't have my tripod. Also, it was very hot as it is today. It's gonna be like that throughout the rest of the month and the next month. So I wanted to do this in the desert. Actually, it's the plan, but I found out, because this is a long ass road like in US, this feels a lot like New Mexico around here. Everything's abandoned, broken. I found out there is a American restaurant. Yeah, they have an American restaurant around these parts in the desert. It's the Tabernas Desert, yeah, where they film. And so I figured, you know, why not pay a visit? Yeah, we can go there. It's not very Texan like the Texas bar, so I went there where I used to grow up. Yeah, and I used to live in my first 5 years of my life. Yeah, and where actually I just ended up going there when I was a kid. I never really thought much into it. I just thought it was funny that I was going to this place, you know, and given that, you know, I'm the Texas aficionado. Apparently, as a kid, I was going something for Texas, so the lines were already there. Yeah, the writing was in the wall. Yeah, already. Yeah, I guess. But yeah, this feels a lot actually more like New Mexico, like Breaking Bad. You just gotta spot an RV here, cooking some meth. And I gotta pay attention because I'm going wobbly here. But I think we are arriving now. Yeah, we were eating here today as I was working today also, but now finally I get the time to talk about the cyber news. Yeah, so oh, we already passed. All right, we need to take a turn here. Shit, give me a second. This is actually you know, it's a lot of lands like in US, but there's not much to it actually. Maybe there is the same, but there's you know, a few places here. But interesting. We visit you know, around the desert. We were actually in the desert after this theme park. Yeah, I think that's the name for it. The theme park. Yeah, there's in the game like theme park world. And so we were in this. After this theme park, you know, because I thought this was gonna be about, you know, the movies, yeah, the spaghetti westerns. This was the whole point of coming here, yeah. But actually, no, this place is not really. It's just like a Disneyland. It's kind of like a Sea World. It felt like a Sea World, like a subpar Disneyland. You know, I complain a lot about Disneyland, and I even went there last year, which was a trip. It was not supposed to be for me. It was supposed to be for my ex-girlfriend, Eudora. Yeah. And I bought her the trip as it was gonna be a surprise for her birthday weekend. Yeah, but we ended up splitting. So she didn't end up going, and I did. So it sucks for her, I guess. Well, I guess it sucked for me also because it was horrible going there. I even got stuck there and wasn't allowed to go into a plane because somebody calls me in the airport my name, and apparently they were not calling me. So yeah, there you go. Maybe it's the little squatting, yeah, that's happening. Anyway, I gotta pay attention here. All right, we can take a U-turn on my U-Haul. Let's see here if I can actually. Oh my God, this car. Maybe I can find a mechanic around here, you know, one of those shady ones. Yeah, we can go here. I think we can turn around. Let's see. And we gotta pay attention next time. So the trucks are passing, so I guess we can cross, yeah? Yeah, alright. Yeehaw! In the still horse I ride. Hi Mac, what are you doing? What are you doing? So you see the skull there from the cave. It's not from here, actually. But we did see, what do you call it? Like skank? No, I guess that's the word. Oh man, I guess that's the word, yeah? Where it comes from. This is not. Okay, this is better, I think. Yeah. Okay. I need to turn off the AC. We will get there in a moment because apparently there are some accidents in this straightaway. Yeah, so we need to actually be careful. People around here speed. Like in Asturias, they were also speeding a lot. They were telling us to be careful. There's also like a lot of how do you call it? Like these parties, yeah. They're around small towns, so people drink, you know, and you gotta be careful. So sorry for the long and lengthy, you know, intro, but it has been several days, yeah, since last time. And if I remember last time I was driving, trying to speak, you know, my phone just fell from the, you know, the holder, yeah. So we are actually almost arriving. So let me see if I get there. Kaimak, sit. Senta. Let's see here if we are arriving. Yeah, this is a dream come true, yeah. Being in this desert, yeah, given the movies and everything I researched, reading up on it as a kid, you know. For me, it's really a dream come true. There's actually like another small Wild West town here, I guess. I'm not sure. Maybe we can go pay a visit after. But yeah, we are arriving to the restaurant here. You know, I might just ask again for the beer. Maybe they'll give me. Let's see here. Oh, there's like some people here. We can put it there. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's probably a lot of Brits here now. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, we are arriving here. Give me just a second, I need to compose myself. So yeah, we are here in a place that is dry and quiet, almost empty. It is very familiar, but there is a reason for it. You know, some of the greatest spaghetti westerns that were ever made were filmed right here. I mean, not in this shithole, I mean in the desert right there. So the landscape, not this one, became the backdrop for many stories about pioneers, about outlaws, lawmen, and people trying to build a new life, far away from what they started and where they started. Now, I've always liked westerns, not because of the gunfights, but because underneath all of that, there are stories about people, about leaving home, about starting over, about building something when nobody's going to build it for you. So when I left Portugal, yeah, I thought I was simply moving abroad. And looking back at it, I mean, I think I was doing something else actually. I was crossing my own frontier, trying to build a new career. Or a career, a life. Maybe trying to figure it out, yeah? What was actually worth carrying with me. Not the guns, definitely. And what I need to leave behind. And you also start thinking differently, you know, about your roots, about your family, about people who helped shape you, and sometimes maybe the people didn't help you, like your family. But one thing that I've realized is that not everyone starts the journey with the same map. Some inherit businesses, yeah. Some inherit connections. Some inherit confidence. Some have inheritance, like my half-brother. But some of the people have to build everything for themselves, like me. And that's the type of people I admire. The people who create from nothing. The people who decide, I'm going to build something that doesn't exist yet. Whether that's a company, a software, a community, or even a YouTube channel filmed in the middle of the desert or in this bar right here. Because creating something can sometimes be a gamble. You don't know if it'll work. You don't know if anyone will care. You only know that if you never try, well, someone else will write the story for you, yeah? And that actually brings me to this week's cybersecurity. But before that, I need to have a nugget. They already brought me here. I like these Pesca Nova nuggets. So the stories were about people trying to build something. Some were building companies, some were building technology, and some will build better defenses. I hope I won't be like that streamer that shocked the dog. So like in old westerns, you had pioneers, yeah, in this week's cybersecurity. So prospectors chasing gold, sheriffs trying to keep order, and outlaws looking for the next bank robbery. But the technology has changed, yeah. And then we saw that human nature hasn't, as we've seen in other weeks. This keeps repeating itself. So our first stop actually takes us back to Portugal. It's a company called Jscrambler. It's founded by an ex-teacher of mine, a former teacher of mine. Yeah, not an ex. And it's a cybersecurity company. And this time became the targets themselves. Skymac, here, stop eating the flies. So actually what happened was a supply chain attack yet again, yeah. And this is definitely a pioneer company, yeah, this company from Portugal. It's called Jscrambler. So if you never actually came across it, yeah, what they actually do is they develop application security solutions that are focused on JavaScript protection, yeah. And I've seen actually this technology, this product being used in many organizations that are obfuscating the JavaScript code, yeah. And a lot of attacks are happening on JavaScript and they're becoming considerably more difficult, yeah. They're definitely one of the Portugal cybersecurity success stories, yeah. A company that becomes successful because it was loud, yeah, or because it was, okay, the dog is eating all the flies in the floor. But unfortunately, as we saw from the story, is also linked in the descriptions. This time they weren't in the news for their product, yeah, they were in the news because they were the victims themselves, they were the target, yeah, of the supply chain attack, as I mentioned. But before we dive into some of the details, we need to know what actually happened, yeah. So basically, according to the incident report that's there, an attacker gained unauthorized access to the NPM publishing account from the company, yeah. So it's something similar from either last week or 2 weeks ago, if I remember. I think it was last week. So this is something very familiar. But if you're not a JavaScript developer, you might be wondering still, what the NPM actually is, yeah, because you're just joining now in this show, so sort of. So NPM is one of the largest software houses, let's think it that way, on the internet, yeah. So millions of developers don't write everything themselves. They just instead they install packages or libraries, frameworks, utilities essentially, that someone else has already written, yeah. So instead of reinventing the wheel from the wagon, let's say that you are simply installing it on a wagon, yeah, basically. So you have thousands of lines of code ready to use. It's incredibly powerful and also creates an enormous amount of trust, yeah. So when you run the npm install command, yeah, you're trusting that package, yeah. You're trusting the maintainers, yeah. You're trusting everyone who has permission to publish updates on it. So we've talked about it in the past, yeah. But sometimes the well is poisoned, and you get the bacteria or the amoeba, yeah? And that's exactly what happened in this attack, or where this attack happened, in the well, yeah? They compromised the publisher, and once they had access, they uploaded malicious versions of the software. God damn it. Of the several official packages from Jscrambler. Yeah. So to developers, it looks legitimate. You have the correct package name, yet again, the correct publisher. There's nothing really, warning us. But that's what makes the supply chain attack so dangerous, because the attacker is not pretending to be trustworthy. They're just abusing something that already is. God damn it. And this dog is getting crazy with his flies too. So what actually happened after installation? So the independent researchers and Jscrambler, the malicious package downloaded, was a Rust-based credential stealer. So why Rust actually? So over the last few years, we've seen more malware offers, adopting this framework, Rust, programming language. So it's efficient because it's cross-platform binaries, Kaimak, here. God damn it, this dog. So it compiles, into standalone executables, for several platforms, making deployment relatively straightforward. I gotta tell you, being in the desert, it is a dream come true, but it's already pissing me the fuck off with these flies. So Rust is becoming one of the common languages in modern malware developments. I think it'll be fine. So the developers are incredibly valuable targets, because the developers, they are holding, secrets like credentials, cloud credentials, AWS. They have GitHub tokens, the access to private repositories, even credentials for like AI coding assistance. So you compromise one developer workstation and you might gain access to an entire organization. That's essentially it. Kaimak, a key. God damn it. So they're becoming high value targets, so more and more, over and over. So why is this a supply chain attack, in this case from the news? Because the attacker, as I said, didn't attack the final victim directly. Stop. So imagine someone poisons the ingredients, like, before they ever reach the pot stew, or the chili con carne. So every customer receives contaminated food, even though the cook in the saloon did nothing wrong, Whatever. So these all applications today are built, from hundreds, sometimes thousands, of these third-party components, So actually very little software nowadays is completely original, Most applications are assembled from these libraries, from these open source libraries, from dependencies, from frameworks, from all of this. So one weak link can travel remarkably far, like the Oregon Trail. So that's why the software supply chain has definitely become one of the most attractive targets for attackers. Come on, you gotta stop, dude. So, having all said and done, how can actual organizations defend themselves? Because there's no single solution, but there are layers as we talk about, like MFA, for example, reviewing who has the publishing permissions, rotating the access tokens, for example, monitoring with the monitoring tools like the package integrity, and many, many, many other things, basically. So, you can use, for example, software composition analysis tools to detect vulnerable or malicious packages. That's also another thing as well. Howdy. So, basically, with that, you can actually verify, or consumers can verify who actually built and published a release, But also something that is very important in this is that updates are not automatically, safe. This is what people have to have in mind, They're necessary, but they should also be verified, That's what I believe from this story and similar stories from the past. So one thing I appreciated about this response from Jscrambler is the transparency, as actually has been throughout the whole history of the company. So they published the detailed incident post-mortem, as I put there. They explain what happened, what was affected, what were the changes they were making. No company is immune for being attacked. Kaimak, a key. And cybersecurity isn't about perfection, it's about preparation, response, and learning, Because today, you're no longer protecting just your own code, you're protecting an entire ecosystem of trust, And while the pioneers are busy building, someone else is already thinking, about how to exploit what they've created, Which is actually the next story, Because if pioneers, the next story I want to talk about. So if pioneers build a frontier, let's say, someone eventually sends a sheriff, And the White House calls that effort the Gold Eagle. But now let me get some fries into my stomach because I'm starving here. They're good. And no, you're not having these. Only the retarded mother you had, we're giving it to you. Now, every small town eventually needs a sheriff, like I was saying. Not because the sheriff can stop every outlaw, but because someone has to bring a little bit of order into the chaos, yeah. And that's exactly what the cybersecurity sheriff has to do. And in this case, from the story, it's called the Gold Eagle, yeah. So it's an initiative from the White House to coordinate how vulnerabilities are discovered and prioritized and patched using AI. Now, that might sound like another one of those AI stories, but I actually think it is a response to something we've been all watching for over the past few weeks. Yeah. For example, this Microsoft's largest patch Tuesday in history that we'll talk about. The 600 vulnerabilities in a single month. So if you think about that for a second, every week on these new shows, security teams, we see that they receive dozens, maybe even hundreds of advisories of these vulnerability reportings, yeah? And each one has a technical documentation, what products are affected, the CVEs, the scores, yeah? The workarounds, the POCs, exploits, the patch availability, the known exploitation on the ground, yeah? And someone has to answer the hardest question of them all regarding all of this. So which vulnerability do we fix first? Because the truth of the matter is, most organizations can patch everything. I mean, I saw it firsthand, yeah. And they can do it definitely immediately. You have the maintenance windows, and applications do break, and production systems cannot be simply rebooted in the middle of the afternoon, yeah, in the siesta time. So, security has to be about prioritization. So not every vulnerability represents the same level of risk, yeah? Like as we talked in the past, so CVSS score might tell you how severe vulnerability might be, but it does not tell you whether your company, yeah, or where you're working at, actually uses that software, or if it is actually a priority in this case, if it's exposed to the internet, or even attackers already exploiting it, yeah? So this is where this initiative, yeah, this Gold Eagle, became interesting in my eyes, because the goal, as I see, is not simply to find more vulnerabilities with this, because AI is already becoming very good at that, I think. Yeah. So the challenge here, yeah, is everything that happens after the discovery. So the duplicate reports, yeah. So can they be removed? Can the similar, for example, similar findings be grouped together? Yeah. Can the vulnerabilities be verified before they reach out to the vendors? Yeah. Even the most dangerous one, can they be pushed to the front of the queue to be handled with? Can even government critical infrastructure or open source maintainers and private companies stop doing the same work over and over and over again? So that's really what Gold Eagle is trying to solve, from what I read, yeah. And even the article from the Cloud Security Alliance, I think that's the CSA, they are describing it as a clearinghouse. So you can think of it less of a security scanner, more like the small town's telegraph office, yeah? So the messages arrive from every direction. Some are duplicates, some contain outdated information, and some are urgent. And someone has to decide, yeah, usually it's the operator, which message reaches to the sheriff first, yeah? The town's sheriff, yeah? So thousands of vulnerability reports are arriving, so this is the analogy. Some are duplicates, some are false positives, some even affect software that nobody's using, yeah, in the small town or in the company in this case. And others even might expose critical infrastructure. So someone has to organize that traffic, yeah? And this artificial intelligence, this initiative, can help sort information. So the researchers are still deciding what matters, yeah? Because obviously the AI can discover patterns, yeah? But humans still have to provide the judgment, yeah? So this is an important distinction to make, I think, because there's been a lot of discussion about AI replacing people, as we've been talking about in the last recent weeks, yeah? And in cybersecurity, I think the bigger story is AI making experienced people more effective, yeah? So, for example, helping analysts work through more information than any human team could realistically process, let's say. So, will Gold Eagle actually solve every of this issue that we're talking about? I don't think so, but I do think it is an acknowledgement that we're entering a new era. Yeah, one where AI is not just helping attackers, as we've seen in the past few weeks, but also helping the defenders. And it's also a race, so that we're gonna watch for years to come. So the next story actually that I want to talk about looks at what happens, yeah, when developers start trusting AI a little bit too much. So it's actually the gold rush of the vibe coding. But I gotta have another nugget, so give me a moment here. So yeah, as I was saying, every frontier has this gold rush. So a moment when everyone believes they've found the fastest way to become successful. So in the 1800s, people rushed west to look for gold, yeah. Most of them never found it, but today we are seeing another gold rush, yeah. So obviously people are not digging for gold, they're just prompting for large language models, yeah. It's the AI craze. So building applications in hours instead of weeks, yeah. And the phrase are here. The phrase for that is vibe coding. Now, before we go further, we got to talk a little bit about what is this vibe coding. So the idea is very simple. Instead of writing every line of code yourself, you describe to an AI assistant parts of what you want to build. So for example, build me a login page, create an API, generate a dashboard, connect to the database. So the AI is writing the code, it's code that you don't really need, you're not being creative with it. So you test it, you tweak it, you just keep moving, yeah, it's fast, the development. And sometimes very fast. Hopefully I'll surpass Speak Duo. And this is lowering the barrier to entry. Someone with very little programming experience can suddenly build, a working application. And that is generally an impressive achievement, I gotta say. But the question here with all of this is, just because an application works, from the vibe coding, yeah, or as a result of vibe coding, does that mean that it's actually secure? So there is a research work done on it, yeah, and there's also a news piece this week. Researchers tried to answer that question actually. So they analyzed AI-generated applications looking for common security flaws, yeah. And obviously the results were not very good or not very encouraging. So many applications, contain known vulnerabilities, well-known vulnerabilities, types like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, even hard-coded secrets. So in other words, the applications often were functioning correctly, yeah, but they weren't really secure or built securely, yeah. And honestly, it's not really a surprise because the AI is generating code based on patterns, even the answers from the prompts, yeah, that it's learned. So it doesn't really understand the business or the context you're trying to give the application, the threat model. Yeah, it doesn't even know whether the application manages, stagecoach deliveries, a general store, a railroad company, or even trading posts. Yeah. So security obviously depends on context. Yeah. So let's take an example of SQL injection. So imagine your application asks the database for information about a user. Yeah. If the application is simply trusting everything the user types, an attacker then just might inject their own SQL commands, yeah? So instead of retrieving, let's say, one account, they can actually retrieve any account, yeah? Or even drop the table, so delete data, or bypass authentication, yeah? And this has been around for a long time, at least since I'm alive, yeah? And yet, it's still appearing in AI-generated applications. Why? Because obviously the secure coding is not about producing a syntax, yeah, it's thinking like an attacker, so AI is not really doing that. And even for other attacks like cross-site scripting, yeah, so an application might correctly display, for example, an user's comment, but if that comment contains the malicious JavaScript code, yeah, the JavaScript injection, then the application is failing to sanitize it every time a user or a visitor, visits the website and ends up executing attacker-controlled code inside their browser, yeah. Again, the application works until someone is abusing it, yeah? And that's definitely the biggest lesson from this research, from what I saw, yeah? Is that functionality, holding this nugget, and security are not the same thing. So an application can pass every functional test and still fail the security assessment, as I've seen in the past in many companies I worked at. So what should developers do first? Yeah. So we gotta treat an AI like a junior developer, like an intern, yeah, as the many that I've seen. So a very fast, very knowledgeable junior developer, let's say. So he can produce excellent work, but you still gotta review it, yeah. The second is you gotta perform security testing. Static analysis, dynamic analysis, dependency scanning, secret scanning, manual code review even, pen testing, let's say, as well. And finally, understand what you're deploying, yeah. Because if the AI generated 5,000 lines of code, you gotta take the time to understand what those 5,000 lines of code actually do, yeah. Because you are responsible for the software, yeah, not the model. Yeah, you're responsible for the output you're putting into the software. So I don't think this AI-generated software is really the problem. I myself use it. I think it's the blind trust we give it, yeah. Every gold rush definitely creates an opportunity, but it also creates speculation, shortcuts, and people selling dreams, yeah, selling snake oil. Artificial intelligence right now is definitely one of the most exciting technological advances, definitely that I've seen in recent years in my career. But like every tool, it needs experience, it needs judgment and responsibility. Otherwise, today's shortcut can become tomorrow's incident report, yeah, and maybe an outlaw ending up in jail. So people profit from this chaos, actually, is the next story I want to talk about, the outlaws of the digital frontier. But now I'm gonna have a sip of my Budweiser and I'll be right to you. Shut up, mutt. Anyway, this is a laid-back Friday. So, the last story we have for today. Every frontier has its outlaws. Some rob trains, some rob banks, like the Stagecoach movie, yeah, with Kirk Douglas. So, what we saw today is that this week, is the US Department of Justice, the DOJ, unsealed an indictment against 3 Russian nationals that are accused of operating one of the world's largest bulletproof hosting providers, yeah. So actually, because of the number of people, allow me to use a little cinematic license.
Хороший, плохой, ай уродливый.
Now, to be clear, those titles are simply a tribute to the classic Western of the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can guess who is the ugly one. The indictment doesn't really describe the defendants that way, yeah. So according to the prosecutors, the 3 allegedly operated something called MediaLand and ML Cloud, so some companies, yeah, that are accused of providing this bulletproof hosting, yeah, to cybercriminal groups. For example, Lockbit, what we talked about in recent weeks. So the authorities are actually estimating that customers using this infrastructure caused a lot of damage, specifically $62 million, yeah, so in documented losses, as they say in the report. The more interesting question from all of this is, what the hell is actually bulletproof hosting, yeah? So I can explain to you. Imagine the Wild West. So you have a gang of outlaws that needs a place to hide, yeah, that happens in the movies. So a place where the sheriff won't ask questions or won't look around, where nobody cares what happens behind closed doors, yeah. So that is essentially what bulletproof hosting is. So a normal hosting provider, yeah, like the Ocean Cloud, I think that was the name in the US, has rules, yeah. If customers host phishing websites or are distributing malware or even running ransomware infrastructure, yeah, they're gonna suspend this account, yeah, obviously because it's unlawful. But the bulletproof hostings, they work differently. They ignore this or they deliberately resist these abuse complaints they get from customers or people. So the customer isn't buying the faster server, they're buying protection from the takedown requests, yeah, from these abuse reports or even the law enforcement, yeah. Well, in this case, it didn't really help, but at least for as long as possible, yeah. So you can think about it like the ransomware operation, yeah. So the malware doesn't exist by itself. It needs command and control servers, yeah, infrastructure, or even data leak websites, payment portals, encryption key servers, infrastructure to negotiate with these victims, yeah, from these attacks. Infrastructure even to publish stolen data or to distribute the new malware they've developed. So you take away that infrastructure, and obviously the operation becomes much harder to sustain, yeah. So that's why these cybersecurity professionals, they say that the criminal infrastructure is just as important as the malware itself, yeah, I think. Because, you know, without the roads, even the fastest horse goes nowhere. Yeah, you like that? That was cute, huh? Let me just get a sip of this. And without the servers, obviously, the most sophisticated malware has nowhere to call home, yeah. So the idea from the news is that they didn't simply rent servers, as it says there. So the companies were designing their business to attract customers, yeah, that expected that their malicious activity would be, you know, tolerated, yeah, I guess. So that definitely changes the role of the hosting provider. So instead of being the passive landlord, yeah, they become part of the criminal ecosystem. Yeah. So that's why governments, you know, even U.S. government, yeah, and the Department of Justice, they focus on infrastructure, you know, by hunting these individuals rather than the individual malware samples. Malware can be rewritten, domains can be replaced, yeah, but dismantling these networks, yeah, that the criminals depend on, will definitely disrupt the entire operation, yeah. It's the difference. It's the difference between arresting a single bank robber and shutting down the town that they keep selling him, you know, the horses, the weapons, the food, you know, is it spam? Corn, beans, yeah. Ammunition, spam is another thing. You don't just catch the outlaw, yeah, you cut off the supply lines, yeah. That is exactly what happened here in this international cooperation. Yeah. So, because cybercrime doesn't really respect borders, yeah, you know, a victim, for example, might be in Spain, it's me here right now. The malware developer might be in Russia, yeah, as from the story. And the payment server might be in another country, like an unlawful land or island. The cryptocurrency exchange might be somewhere else entirely, yeah. So modern cyber criminal is global. So fighting it must also be on a global scale as well, yeah. So as we leave, yeah, this frontier behind, one thing becomes clearer from all of this, as the pioneers build the frontier. The sheriffs, howdy ho,
Howdy, partner.
try to protect it. The gold rush brought opportunity and shortcuts as well. And the outlaws always search for a place to hide. So all of this is nothing new. And the digital frontier is not that different from the Wild West. The technology changes, the human nature doesn't, yeah. It's all the same thing, yada, yada, yada. That's not from the Wild West. So yeah, this is what I wanted to bring into attention this week. Sorry for rushing through it a bit, just closing down the place in a few. I had to also get something to eat because I can only pay with card from €10. Welcome to Europe. And yeah, I have my Budweiser here, not really made in America, but this one is, actually it's not American, it's German, I think. But it's drink, I'm missing Bud Light very much, I gotta tell you. Although I only had it in the US when I was visiting, and I'm Portuguese, not American, as these people think. But anyway, I digress. I'm gonna finish here my nuggets, I'm gonna finish my beer, I'm gonna see if Kaimak ate all of the flies and I can get a discount for it when paying for my meal. And, you know, I gotta go back to work and visit the rest of the desert. Hopefully I will not get stranded somewhere and, you know, without any drop of water, yeah. But anyway, I'm signing out then. I'll be finishing up my meal and I'll see y'all, see what I did there, next week. Hopefully in the, you know, correct day or something happened here. Anyway, I'm